Hey, well, hello. Welcome to the fourth episode of Missouri Swagger with Cullen Bunn and Dennis Hopeless. Uh,
Missouri swagger.
let's not go
That's our
there.
that's our theme song now.
All
We
right,
got swagger and we're from Missouri.
you've made me change my mind about the title. So, Cullen, we're recording this at 10:14 on a Sunday night.
It's a late night for me, brother.
It
It's a late
is.
night.
Oh, damn. That tells you what kind of night it is. I just got done watching Indiana Jones and the what's the arc one called? The
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of
You
the
mean the
Lost Ark.
first and most
The first,
famous
well,
of
yeah,
the
the
Indiana
best one.
Jones?
The best one. I was just thinking of the name. I had not seen it all the way through. Kyle Strom tried to make me watch it once, and I fell asleep because we were drinking. So I saw the ending, which the famous ending with the faces, and I saw most of the beginning, but I had not seen the middle since I was a very little kid. So Scott Drummond, who is a fantastic illustrator here in Kansas City, invited me over. I think Pity invited me. I think he could tell that I was going to have a sad, lonely man's night, so he invited me to come over and eat dinner and watch this fine film. So I have been
Wow.
watching Indiana Jones.
Sometimes I forget that you are an idiot when it comes to the movies you have not watched 100,000
I'm
times
just
over
a
and over
little
and
bit
over again.
younger than you. That movie came out the same time I did.
Yes, that's true. Um, I remember going to that movie with my mom. She took me to the movie and she leaned over when they were describing the power of Christianity and the power of God. And she
Mhm.
said, "That's just like the Force in Star Wars."
Did that blow your mind?
Yeah, I was just like, whoa, mom, you really know what's going on.
You just made church cool.
Yeah. She also took me to see Conan the Barbarian when I was in fourth or fifth grade, whenever that was. And that was not a movie a fourth or fifth grader should be going to see.
No.
And there was a group of like 10 kids outside. They couldn't get into it because it was an
Mhm.
R-rated movie. And they walked up and they said, "Would you be our mother today?" And she brought all these kids in.
What? She said yes?
Yes.
That would not happen today.
No, you'd get in big trouble. But
I remember when I was like 11 or 12, I spent the summer with my grandmother for the most part, because there were kids my age near her house and not near mine. And I remember one time I wanted to go see Species because I liked science fiction movies. And my grandma would take me whatever movie I wanted to go to. Like that same time, she took me to Braveheart and I don't know, R-rated stuff. Anyway, in the middle of Species, I remember my grandmother looking around and then leaning over into my ear and saying, "Now I understand why I'm the only girl in here." Because there's like a ton of nudity in Species. Like it's the
it's also
creature, like
not a good
what?
movie.
Oh no, it's terrible. But it
Yeah.
was mortifying to
I
watch
just
that with my
I
grandmother.
just rewatched it maybe 6 months ago. It was like on HBO or something. So I said, "Well, I'll watch that." And I remember why I haven't seen it since I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even really remember it. I just remember my grandmother not liking it. She did like Braveheart,
It's a good
and she
movie.
took me to Jurassic Park that same year. So I
Hmm.
got to see some fun stuff with grandma.
So do you have a favorite movie, Dennis?
I mean, my favorite movie, honestly, is probably Love Actually.
All
I've
right,
seen
we're
that
done.
movie more,
It's over.
and I'm a sap, and I really like romantic comedies, and that one I think might be the best. And there's some scenes in that. What's interesting about that movie is at this point I've liked it for so long that I now relate to different characters, and so like some of the scenes that I thought were really like heartbreaking or amazing or whatever whenever I was younger, now are just like I don't pay that much attention. I've seen them 1,000 times, and some of the other stuff in it is more relatable. Which
Okay.
I think is the case with a lot of movies, especially movies that you saw as a kid where there's kids in them and adults in them. And at some point, especially after you have children, you start to relate to the adults, which is really weird. Um,
First
but
of
yeah,
all, Love Actually is not the greatest romantic comedy.
that's my favorite.
It's not the greatest. The greatest romantic comedy is It Could Happen to You, starring Nicolas Cage and Bridget Fonda. It's an awesome romantic comedy. It makes me feel good inside when I watch it.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah, well, you need to go watch it right now. It's a beautiful movie.
Well, I like Love Actually. I don't know what to tell you.
I also
I,
like
I
Music and Lyrics with Drew
oh
Barrymore and
that
Hugh
yeah
Grant.
that's good.
Yeah,
Uh, Notting Hill's really good. Um,
I've never seen Notting Hill. It is my Raiders of the Lost Ark.
There is a movie. I never remember what this damn movie's called, and it is structurally really interesting. And it is a movie about a guy that finds out that his family has the power to travel in time, to travel back into their body in previous moments and relive them, so they can go backward and like change the way a date went, or he can go backward and spend more time with whatever, and it changes the timeline, so he exists in that timeline after a certain point. And it is an interesting time travel movie because they never, it's not about, oh God, we messed this up, we have to go fix it. It's just about like relationships and family and what you're willing to sacrifice and what you wouldn't be, what you would do over and what you wouldn't.
Does it have a happy ending or a terribly sad ending?
Well, there's a, because I guess I could spoil it because I'm not saying what the fuck it's called, but there's a moment where he finds out his dad has terminal cancer, and the
Yeah,
dad remembers quit his job in order to spend time with him when he was a teenager.
yeah,
But the reason that happened is because the dad found out he had terminal cancer, so he went back in time and quit his job to have that extra time.
yeah.
So once that
At
happens,
some
he.
point, walking around New York City with my good friend Sean Lee,
Mhm.
Sean described this movie to me in detail. And
Right.
I don't know if it was just in a certain mood or I was missing home or what, but I was almost crying over that ending you just described, walking around the streets of New York, as
Well,
just for him giving me that story.
when there's a devastating beat where the guy realizes he can't go back and see his dad anymore because of other things that happen,
Yep,
that
that's the one.
I because I saw it, my kids were real little. I think I saw it whenever they had just been born, and I lost my own father when I was 20. So the combination of those two trauma, like the trauma of having children and the trauma of losing my father, and the way that movie works out, yeah, I like curled up in a ball and bawled.
Yeah,
But I don't know that it's a romantic. It's kind of a funny movie, but I don't
yeah.
know that it's a
I
romantic.
don't know the title. I knew it, but I swore when he told me that story I would never watch it. And
You should watch it.
it's probably a wonderful movie, but I will not watch it. There's just no way. I can't do it.
The thing, it's a really good movie, and the thing that's interesting about this is funny that we're talking about this on camera with no idea what this movie's called.
Right.
But the way it deals with time travel and the paradox of time travel is really interesting because it doesn't do any of the tropes, and it really doesn't make them pay for the fact that they are using the time travel thing. It's just a matter of like decisions you have to make as you go through life. I don't know. It's great. So yeah, we might throw up in the comments. I'll figure out what it's called. We'll throw up what
I'm
the
sure
movie.
someone will tell us. I can
That's good.
find out what it's called for sure, but I do remember that story. That's why I asked you if it had a terrible ending because what Sean described to me, uh, it broke me up. It tore me
Yes,
up a
it
little
has a
bit.
devastating ending. I
Yeah,
wouldn't.
that I
It's not
can't.
really.
That's why I
Yeah.
can't watch it. It's why I won't watch the movie Big Fish again.
Hmm.
I think Big Fish is a great movie. I love that movie. I bought it on Blu-ray or DVD with no intention of ever watching it again. I just can't do it.
Right.
I think it's an awesome movie that I will never watch again.
Is the guy too much like your dad?
Yeah, yeah, and I don't like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just it. It's not. It's just like I said. I love the movie, but I can't watch it.
That's fair. That's. I mean, there's certain movies you don't want to see again.
My
For
favorite movie
very.
is The Thing.
The Thing is fantastic. I got to see it at the Alamo Draft House with Kyle Strom a few years ago, and it was a clean print. Like it had only been
Yeah,
played like 3 or 4 times, so it was like watching it in 1984 or whatever, and it was gorgeous.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was
I
really cool.
The first time I watched it, I used to go to the boys' club in Goldsboro, North Carolina. Uh, we had a Dungeons and Dragons club
Of
that we would
course.
go and play Dungeons and Dragons. But when we weren't playing Dungeons and Dragons, we were just walking around the boys' club playing foosball and basketball and watching movies. They had this giant TV with a laser disc player, and somebody brought the thing in and played the thing for all of us children to watch. Uh,
Right.
and it was amazing. What a great movie to watch with a bunch of kids who have no idea what they're in
What
for.
they're in for? Yeah.
Yeah. That scene where the guys, got the defibrillator and the guy's
Yeah.
chest opens up and chomps down. I think I heard so many kids screaming just because nobody expected it. They're just like, what's
Right.
going on? I hope this doctor saves this nice gentleman. Because in a lot of cases, the kids were just wandering by. They had no idea what they were watching. They're like, oh man, it's An episode of whatever medical show was popular back then. Quincy, probably. And they thought they were watching Quincy, and then this thing chomps Quincy's
The
arms
hell is
off.
Quincy? I would have gone Saint Elsewhere.
The thing is older than St. Elsewhere. It's not older than.
Okay.
It might be older than Quincy.
I don't know what the fuck Quincy is, so
What about Marcus Welby? Was he a TV doctor? I think Marcus Welby was also a TV
I
doctor.
don't know.
Or a musician. He's either a musician or a TV doctor.
There's a weird thing about like you and I, part of our childhoods overlap, but because you're older than me, there are things that you remember from early childhood that do not exist to me
I know.
whatsoever. And then there's also stuff that I was into that to you was just kiddie crap that didn't matter later.
It's what makes me a better person.
What makes you a different person?
Better. Let's be honest.
Better than something.
Yes.
Certainly not better than me. Um, so yeah, Indiana Jones. What's else? I'll give you another favorite movie. What do I like? What do I like? I really like Road Warrior.
Yeah, Road Warrior's good. I th-
My dad and I had a strange relationship because he was a little bit of a piece of shit. Uh, and I loved him to death, but we had an antagonistic relationship, and he was, I don't know, it's a weird guy. But it's interesting. A lot of the things that I got really into, like my passions and my hobbies, were stuff that he would just like say, "Hey, this is cool. Like Mad Max is really cool." So I was really into Mad Max. Or like he stole a box of comic books out of someone's uh, barn one time. My dad would go pilfer around people's barns looking for old cars, and then if he found one, he would go to try to like talk them out of it for nothing. So he would collect old cars that he was planning on restoring one day, and then instead he spent 15 years building a three-car garage in the backyard and then died and never did it.
He was like the
But
American Pickers before American Pickers.
yes, except for way less legal because he definitely just broke and entered.
Mm.
And one time he was looking for something and he found an old box of comic books and just took them, brought them
Well,
to me and gave them to me. And I think that sparked my love of comic books. But definitely like science fiction and like things like Star Trek and Star Wars and Mad Max, I got from my dad. My dad loved Road Warrior, so
I
I
think
love
I
that
uh,
movie.
I think I broke Road Warrior for myself for a while. I watched it so many times that I stopped liking it,
Is
which
it
was
because the
weird.
Lord Humongous is just so attractive that it's hard to
I don't
pay
know what it
attention
was, but
anymore?
there was a time where I would have told you that Thunderdome was a more watchable movie than Road Warrior because I'd watched Road Warrior so many times I was tired of it, and Thunderdome was giving me something that Road Warrior wasn't. Obviously, not a better movie by any stretch of the imagination, but for a while I would rather watch that than Road Warrior.
I mean, Master Blaster is a better character than anything
Master
in Road
Blaster
Warrior.
is the greatest. He is my spirit animal, Master Blaster. Both of them together. It's a two for one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's some really fun stuff. I liked Thunderdome a lot when I was a little kid because it was crazy, but it's not a good movie.
No.
Anyway, but yeah, so I like Mad Max so much and Road Warrior so much that when I was watching uh, Fury Road in the theater, I was crying. Like I smiled through the whole thing. My teeth were visible through the whole thing, and it was like a almost a not a religious experience, but I felt like no movie has ever existed that my dad would have loved more than Fury
Then
Road,
Fury
and he
Road.
didn't get to see it, so he was like sort of there with me. Um, so yeah,
That's
big
awesome.
fan.
Yeah. My my favorites vary by genre and day of the week. The Thing is always pretty high up there. Alien is pretty high up there.
Right.
Seven Samurai is pretty high up there. Um, Big Trouble in Little China will always be ranked somewhere near the top.
80s movies are weird because if you saw them when you were a child, they're amazing. And if
Yes,
you saw them when you were an adult and didn't, they
yes.
don't age that well. So like Big Trouble, I understand why people like it, but it seems really hammy to me.
That's the
Whereas
point. Come on.
I know it's the point, but I didn't get it. And Ghostbusters, I don't get Ghostbusters at all because I did not see that until I was 25, and then I thought it was slow and boring. And I loved the cartoon when I was a kid, and I saw Ghostbusters 2 in the theater, and Ghostbusters 2 is a flame like a smoldering pile of shit. It is so bad. Ghostbusters 2 is so bad. The
I
only
don't
thing
like
that is good
anything you're
about
saying
Ghostbusters
right now.
2, the
I
only thing
don't
good about
like it.
Ghostbusters 2 is that Bill Murray clearly doesn't care that he's in a movie and just reads the lines with whatever expression he decides to. And that
I'm
is
not. I'm
hilarious.
not happy with the way this conversation's going.
It's true. I'm not a person that loves hating on things. I'd rather tell you about things that I love. And I know people love Ghostbusters. Not for me.
I love Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
But I
no
think you're
doubt.
right. Because I think back on like awesome movie going experiences, and Big Trouble in Little. And this is not. I didn't go to the movies to see Big Trouble in Little China. I missed it, but when it was out, first run. But I was in Amarillo, Texas, staying in a little motel, and HBO showed Big Trouble in Little China and Aliens back to back, and I saw them for the first time together, and it was one of my favorite nights of
Right.
ever watching a movie. Was watching it on some little television in a roadside Amarillo, Texas motel, um, and that night was special to me. Same thing with Fright Night and
Oh, Fright
House.
Night's awesome.
Fright Night and House played on HBO one night, and I watched them back to back and
Mhm.
as a kid, and I thought it was the greatest moment of my life. I was like, this is what movies are supposed to be. So yeah, I
Right.
get it. I mean, to some degree, the experience, the memory of watching it is as important to me as the movie itself with
Right.
those. And I think I've told you this. I know I've told Kyle Strom this. He loves the story. Uh, we were in Texas, and there was a movie coming out that we knew nothing about. My dad and I knew nothing about this movie. It was Predator. And we thought going into it, it was just another Arnold action movie. I thought, based on the poster, it was a sequel to Commando. We had
Right.
no idea that it was anything other than an action movie. So I'll never forget sitting down in the theater and the movie starts and that ship comes down and shoots the little pod down to earth, and I was like, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what movie this is.
Right.
I I don't know how I avoided trailers for Predator. I have no idea how I never saw a trailer for it. Um, but
Did it blow your mind?
what an awesome movie to watch without knowing anything about it. It would only thing that would have made it better is if that ship wasn't in the first couple of minutes. Like if I didn't know it was an alien movie until the Predator shoots Jesse Ventura and blows his chest out, that
Right.
would have made it a perfect movie for me.
Yeah, I love that. I used to like on HBO. So we didn't have cable when I was a kid, and my grandmother did, and she always had HBO. And my favorite thing was to turn on an HBO movie after it had said the name, but before, when the credits were still going, she had no idea what you were watching, and
Right.
it could be anything, it could start up. One time, that's how I saw Batman 1989. Is it was just like an opening scene. I think it's maybe the newsroom scene or something at the very beginning where it wasn't clear it was Batman. I'm like, this is a Batman movie. It blew my mind.
That's a great way of
Um,
watching movies.
yeah,
People should
yeah.
do that.
The thing you
I
what?
don't like trailers the way they are now. I don't like that trailers have trailers.
Yeah,
You go to YouTube, and now at the beginning, when they play trailers, there's a little clip of the trailer, and it says, "Get ready. Here's the trailer for whatever Godzilla King of Monsters or whatever." And I've already
right,
seen a couple of seconds of it because they're actually promoting the trailer before it starts.
right. Trailers are problematic if you understand plot structure too, because you can put together oftentimes the entire movie based on the little bits they give you if you understand how
Thank
plots
goodness I
work.
don't understand plot structure.
That's your saving grace. Yeah,
Hey,
I try not to watch
Terminator
trailers.
2, Terminator 2, the trailer, I remember very clearly, had his thumb going down into the
Which is
molten metal.
insane.
I know, right? It's
Yeah,
terrible.
it's crazy. Although, if you think about it, when you were watching the Terminator 2 trailer, you didn't realize that the Terminator was the good guy, right? Because he had been the bad guy in the previous one. So unless the trailer gave you a lot away, that scene
Yeah.
wouldn't have had the same resonance it does at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I can't remember if I knew going into it. I guess I didn't, but I don't remember.
Yeah, the thing you were talking about hotel rooms, my father would go out of town all the time when I was a kid, and he would relay the plots to episodes of Tales from the Crypt to me. He would watch Tales from the Crypt in a hotel room, and then he would come back and he would tell me. So I had like a store in my head of all these Tales from the Crypt episodes, but we didn't have cable, we didn't have HBO. And I remember one time I guess I was at a hotel for something and everybody was asleep. I turned the TV on and one of those episodes of Tales from the Crypt came on. And I remembered my dad telling me about it. And I was so excited because like I kind of knew it was coming, but also I was going to be able to tell dad about it. And so Tales from the Crypt I always loved because of that and would watch it at my grandma's house or any chance I got because it was this thing my dad would share to me as like a narration that I could then watch.
I feel like Tales from the Crypt is a show that's probably best watched like in a really cheap motel room, and it's got one of those beds with the little quarter machines where the bed vibrates.
Yes,
and I
that's
think
definitely what this was.
a soda in hand, Tales from the Crypt on television, then that bed shaking. That's probably the best way to watch a Tales from the Crypt episode. And I love the show, but man, was it cheesy.
Oh yeah, super cheesy. It was perfect for a little kid though, because it's a perfect level of horror, and the twists were always really fun. It was a good. So those magic fingers. Let's get back to the vibrating bed.
Yeah.
Was that supposed to be a massage, or is that a sex thing? Because I definitely played with them when I was a little kid, but I remember thinking at some point.
I'm sure it's a little bit of both, right?
Well, why would you want to vibrate? I mean, I don't know. I'm conflicted about that, and they didn't exist when I was old enough to have used it for anything other than.
I don't think they were very sexy. I mean, they were.
But they were called magic fingers.
Is that what they were called?
Yes, magic fingers. I don't know, dude.
Well, maybe they just weren't made for you.
Well, they definitely weren't made for me. They were because I was a child, and they yanked them out of there by the time I was old enough for them to have been.
I feel like anytime I was at a motel that had those, they were already like 45 years old and were they're like on the verge of just going out completely.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's a good point.
They were probably very, very delightful in the early days. Like when they first installed them, they were probably smooth,
No,
but
I
then
don't think
they shook like a washing machine.
I mean, none of that stuff that they had in those like 70s and 80s motels to be features that they could trick you into coming there for were worth a damn.
Yeah, you're probably
like a bathtub with jets. If it's the size of a regular bathtub, just sprays water out of it.
Did you ever stay in those the motels with they had the switch in the bathroom that would turn on this really bright like red light or something?
It's a tanning light.
What was it for?
I think it's a tanning light.
Yeah, well, I don't think you were supposed to tan. Wasn't it like a sauna text? I don't know.
Supposed to do for it. Yeah, right. No, I never understood that. Same sort of thing. Like, there's no way anybody used that for anything. Little kids would turn it on and be like, "Meh!" But I don't think there's no way it had a purpose.
No. Yeah, but that's what I remember of old hotels. Those beds and those lights in the I'm sure someone will tell us
we'll find out
what those were
all
for.
Of those things.
And they'll tell us if you've used those vibrating beds for whatever purpose, I would love for you to share that with us.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I also, because of like movies and TV, I assumed that every motel had a honeymoon suite with a rotating heart-shaped bed, and I have never actually seen one of those in the wild.
No, I don't think there are that many of them out there. I think that's it's a myth.
Yeah, it was something created. I also didn't understand that the movies weren't just a reflection of the real world; they were a world that was being created. I thought everything was real.
Yes. And it was with great sadness that I realized that was not the case.
Yes. Because you wanted to be on that heart-shaped bed spinning?
It's just any movie. I just wanted to be in any of that. I wanted to go on adventures with the Goonies. I wanted to go back. I wanted to ride the DeLorean and Back to the Future. I wanted all that stuff. I wanted it all to be real.
That's why we make fiction for a living, I think.
That's
because
right.
Because at some point we were disappointed to learn that the real world is boring.
That's right.
And now we may make head worlds inside our heads that we describe to artists who then draw them, and then all these fine people get to read them.
That's right.
Or if you want, you could just send us money directly.
Yes, just send us your money,
and we will tell you our stories. We'll tell you our stories here, There's a thing I actually want to do. I want to ask the audience if they would be interested in this. Cullen and I do a thing to help one another out when we're working on plot outlines, where we'll call and just kind of run over a plot and get notes back and forth. And we obviously can't record that for books. We can't record it and throw it up right now because those books aren't out yet. But we could record one
Yeah,
now, and in 4 months
save
when
it.
that book comes out, show the thought process of it. So if you guys would be interested in that, it's going to take a little bit more planning than obviously than we normally do.
Then
So
we
we'd
are
like to know you're interested.
maybe
I
more
think that might
planning
be
than we
fun.
are capable of. But
Yeah, we'll get used to it. I saw somebody disparaging us online the other day, suggesting that we'll see people usually apparently give up on things when they don't get immediate gratification. And so they were speculating that you and I would quit if we didn't immediately get 100,000 followers. That is not how I work, and I don't think that's how you work. So you guys can expect us to be talking to the 100 of you or
who said
whatever.
that? Who said that?
It doesn't matter.
It does matter.
Someone who's entitled to their opinion.
All right, whatever. That's fine.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so we've talked about romantic comedies and Tales from the
Yes,
Crypt and Vibrating Beds. I think we've covered a lot of ground tonight.
we have.
Um,
Glad we did this.
I am too.
Well,
Uh,
is it time for your Missouri Swagger story?
oh, I can tell a quick one. We talked a lot about my dad, so I'll tell another story. They're not all about my dad. Um, but this one is absolutely 1000% all about Missouri because my parents moved to Missouri when I was 18 years old. They got the brilliant idea that they wanted to own a 400-acre cattle farm in Thayer, Missouri.
What's that?
It's right on the Arkansas-Missouri border.
Okay.
So I didn't go with them immediately. I stayed in North Carolina for a little while until I realized I just wasn't quite ready to live on my own.
Right.
And I was getting ready to go to college, and I didn't want to go to college, without some sort of support network. And I ended up following them to Missouri a few months later. And on the first night that I came into the house, my parents, they had this, like I said, they bought a huge spread of land, and it had a big, nice, really cool house on this property. The first night I was in the house, I was upstairs, and then I said, well, I'm going to go downstairs and get my stuff unpacked. And I went downstairs, and in the living room downstairs there was a bucket, like a 10-gallon bucket, and it had a book over, not 10 gallon, I don't know how many gallons are in a bucket. It was a bucket, and it had a book over the top of it. And at first I didn't think anything about it. I was like, okay, there's a weird bucket in the middle of the room, book on top. But there was something, as I walked by, there was something like popping, hitting the book. It's
Right.
like, you could hear it.
Sure.
And I was like, well, and the book was moving. It was moving on top of the bucket. It was shaking.
Right.
So I walked over to the bucket, and I just flipped the lid off, flipped the book off, and there were three gigantic tarantulas in this bucket that my younger brother had gone out and collected during the day and put in the bucket to terrorize me with them. And these tarantulas were jumping, trying to get out of the bucket. So when I saw them, I was like, "Hey, tarantulas!" Not really.
Right.
I shrieked loudly, and I kicked the bucket over, and the tarantulas started scurrying around the living room. And we had to collect them and get them out of the house. And that's how I learned that Missouri has a lot of tarantulas.
So they were just like in the house?
Yeah.
I
Um,
would not have guessed that Missouri had a lot. The only tarantulas I've ever seen were at a pet store in
right.
Missouri.
So so to take that one step further, there was not long after that. We lived down this long dirt road. Like to get to the
Right.
main road, we had to drive like a couple of miles down a dirt road. And I was driving down this road, and I'm looking across the road, and I'm like, "What is this in the road? Look at all these rocks." And I realized they weren't rocks. There were thousands of tarantulas, Texas browns, crawling across the road. And apparently, they migrate during certain times of the year by the thousands. They're just moving through the grass in this area of Missouri.
So you just
Uh,
run them over?
well, that's all you could do. You couldn't. I mean, you couldn't stop. They're everywhere.
What a
So
horrifying nightmare for both you and the tarantulas.
Yeah. And scorpions. They had a lot of scorpions too, but I'll
Yeah.
tell a scorpion story some other time. Um, but yeah, just if you didn't know that about Missouri, in Thayer at least, and I don't know if it's still the case, but 20 something years ago, by the thousands, these tarantulas would march across the road during certain times of year.
That is I don't really mind spiders that much, but that seems really creepy. Like if those were snakes, I would curl up in a ball and die.
Yeah, there were no snakes. These weren't snakes, but definitely tarantulas. So yeah, there you go. That's a 100% Missouri story.
It's a good one. All right, folks. Thanks for watching. Promise we'll
Yep.
get better. Can't get
No,
worse.
we got to stop promising that. We're awesome. But
We'll
if you
get
did
better every
like
time.
it, if you liked it, click the little thumbs up
Yes.
and subscribe.
Subscribe. Make sure you're still subscribed.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
All
We'll
right.
talk to
Thanks,
you soon.
guys.